I said earlier today that putting together this conference is always trying to find the cutting edge topics, and one thing that has been in the news this year, I think, on front pages more than any other, is talking about privacy and security in our messaging and especially our email world. And they're lined up like rock stars here. Where are your instruments? Didn't bring them? All right. So I'm really proud because we have a stellar panel of experts in this space together from the leading companies in the field with a stellar moderator that I'm now handing over the microphone. Hi, Diane. Hi, Paul. Hi, Josh. Hi, Brett. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, everybody. I'm Diane. I'm not the stellar mind on this panel. I'm just here to ask questions. I want to. Everybody's getting a mic. Good. It's like a party gift. Come on up. I guess I should sit. I'll sit over here. I'm not quite sure where I should sit, but I want to start as everybody's sitting down. Raise your hand if you have personally had your email hacked. Has anybody had that? Very few. What about your company's email? So I remember landing in Moscow, and in mere seconds I was issuing Cyrillic tweets. So that was not a good, happy moment for me. So I love the name of this panel. I feel it's that sort of existential angst of, will messaging ever be safe, ever? So let me start by asking each of our smart minds here to talk about where they fit in this ecosystem. I'm going to start with you, Josh. Oh, you don't have a mic? I feel like I'll just hand it over.
Yeah, Josh Aberrant with SparkPost. We're a cloud email platform. I run marketing over there. Previous to that, I spent 4 years at Twitter, where I was the postmaster responsible for messaging security and privacy, and so had a lot of fun in the security space there.
Okay.
Hi, that's really loud. Hi, my name is Dennis Damon. I am the Chief Privacy and Security Officer for ReturnPath, and I've been in email for a very long time, about 20 years. Keep telling myself I'm going to leave, but it seems to keep paying over and over and over. I basically came from the internet service provider side, where I was the one actually blocking email from marketers and other nefarious sources, and then realized the marketer side paid a whole lot better, so I flipped over to that side, and ever since then I've been working through companies like StrongMail, Eloqua, and now at ReturnPath.
Hi, Paul Kincaid-Smith at SendGrid. I am industry relations, and before that, I'd focused a great deal of my attention on stopping the bad actors that would corrupt a good platform by keeping the spammers off. In addition to that, we also put a lot of effort into building out a delivery services team to help our good customers get the coaching they need in order to get better results from their email. So that's been my time at SendGrid, and let me say, it's been very interesting to see email change over the years.
Hi, my name is Bart Butler. I am the CTO at ProtonMail, which we are a startup email provider that basically attempts to make using encrypted email as easy as using Gmail. So we try to sort of hide or otherwise do the encryption for you, but in general to increase the security of messaging. So I guess in that way I'm a little bit a different sort of a different side of this particular problem, being the provider versus the marketer and other things.
I'm feeling poor Josh is at a disadvantage here, so I feel like I should almost hand over the mic to you and just kind of lean in when I'm doing. But I want to start with just kind of the macro Hillary Clinton, John Podesta issue is, should we be having email servers in our basement? I mean, let's just talk about, okay, if you're not running for office, but I want to hear your thoughts on just kind of what's been in the news lately and what we can glean from that, either as companies, as individuals. Don't put anything you wouldn't want us to read, but other than that, what else should we get from that? And I'm going to hand over the mic. You can all start fighting with each other on this.
Yeah. Really interesting question. Alex Stamos, who was formerly CSO at Yahoo and now CSO at Facebook, recently did this thought experiment where it was what would it take to secure an email server that you were running on yourself? And they created this best practices document, and it was like 20. I mean, Bart would probably know what's involved in that. It was like 20 pages of patching and getting your Linux up to date and all these things. And with the general sense being, yeah, you can't be nearly as secure as Gmail. Now, it's funny though. you mentioned the political case, because with all these hacks that have come out, like John Podesta, Colin Powell, that was actually Gmail accounts that did get hacked, whereas Hillary Clinton's private email server, at least as far as we know so far, hasn't actually been hacked and hasn't been revealed. So that's an interesting counterpoint there. Right, and she probably had some serious professionals helping her run that, we hope at least. Another really interesting point, though, with the John Podesta and the Colin Powell emails is this has all come out in the past couple days. That the end there was a spoofed email. Like another spoofed email was how they got in. They literally spoofed the Gmail account reset password. They fell for it, clicked, went to the bad links, and got in there. They were actually using Bitly as a redirector. I don't know if anyone's followed this, but the attackers, the Fancy Bear, actually forgot to lock down their Bitly account. So you can actually see the 30,000 different phishing URLs they created, each one personalized with the attackees or the victims, the intended victims' information in there.
Yeah, so what this is showing is that the human element is really the weakest link, because we're going to be fallible. We will make mistakes. And so the question we've got to ask ourselves is, how can we protect ourselves despite our fallibility? And from a practical point of view, leave what you can to the experts who are really good at it. We don't have...
Don't use runner 456 as your...
Yes,
Exactly.
absolutely.
That was
So practically, let's do what we can to hand off the security to experts who make that the focus of their job. I don't fix my car as well as my mechanic would, for example. The other thing we should really think about is two-factor authentication or multi-factor auth. If somebody does get my password because they snuck malware onto my machine, or they're sniffing the network, or there are many, many ways they're looking over my shoulder when I type. If they get my password, are they still going to be able to use that to get at my private information? So we can take some extra steps that introduce a tiny bit of inconvenience to add quite a lot of extra protection.
Two-factor is a great example there. It probably would have stopped both these political hacks that we've been reading about in so many cases.
Use two-factor
Well,
here? Everybody does, you know...
Let's explain what
Explain,
two-factor
yeah, explain what
authentication
it
is.
I do. It's such a hassle.
Right. You know, you log into
I
your
hate it.
systems, whether it be your email account or your corporate network, with a username and a password. There are other things that you can use on top of that. You may get a text from Google saying, we don't recognize this computer you're on.
Is it safe
Type
to
in
get
this
a text?
number.
I get codes texted to me. That seems vulnerable in itself.
It is not perfect,
So I
but
wanna-
it's
what
a
do you
step
think?
up.
Well, and there's different ways of doing it. I mean, at our company, we had given the choice to get a text, right, in two-factor. Now we're using things like Google Authenticator, which is an app that's on the phone. It's like RSA tokens, if you've ever seen the changing passcode.
Your thumbprint.
Yeah, well,
your
and
retina
we'll get into
scan.
biometrics, because that's also another sort of good and bad thing as well. But we make our employees use the apps, right? Because you can forge text messages occasionally. But now, however, you can't forge the actual code. You know?
And there is another company that's becoming increasingly popular. It's Duo, D-U-O, and they have an awesome integrated two-factor auth system.
You're not allowed to say the word awesome about another company here. It's forbidden. But I want to tell me, each of you, I'm going to start down with you in terms of what are your biggest headaches? What has been sort of something
The
that
end user.
keeps you up at, okay, yeah, customers, no, but tell me a little bit about that and kind of how you've dealt with that. If you could wave a wand and fix anything. Josh, you get the mic.
It's certainly the user, for sure. But at the same time, I mean, you can educate the user to some degree. You can't fix the user. So you need to approach this from a perspective of, I need to build this in a way where it inconveniences or otherwise, affects the user. It makes it as easy as possible for the user to do the right thing.
But I want to interrupt a sec just to say this is more the Oprah segment where I want you to look at yourself and tell me what your biggest headache is as a company in terms of just even some anecdotes around issues you've had to deal with. Is there anything you can say on that front?
Well, I mean, so we have, and this every company that has to do with accounts deals with resetting, because people forget their passwords. They you have the strong password indicator, and they set a really strong password and then completely forget about it. So in our case, this is especially a problem because we end-to-end encrypt emails. So if you forget your password, we offer a way to reactivate your account. However, all your existing emails are now unreadable, unless you remember your old password, basically. That's how this works. And we have a hard time sort of explaining to users that, look, we do not have access to your emails. That is the entire point of our system, so that if you get hacked, or if we get hacked rather, if we get in a Yahoo situation, it won't be a Hillary Clinton, John Podesta situation where all your emails are sort of out in the cloud for anybody to read. It'll be ciphertext, and that's sort of the value add. That's our value proposition. But as a result, we cannot reset things for you such that everything's back to normal. And explaining that is hard. So we have to try to engineer things so that people don't lose their password. And part of this is policy. I mean, maybe we can talk about this a little bit. I know in the email you sent, sort of, what would you say people should be doing in terms of password policy? And I want to talk about two factors.
Let's go to that in a minute, because I want
Sure.
to hear about the headaches and the nightmares first, and then I think you're right.
Sure.
And we'll get lots of questions.
Yeah, this may not be SendGrid's biggest headache, but I can tell you for the audience here, it could become a big headache for you. So I'm going to talk about spam house and blacklistings. Who here knows what a spam house blacklisting is and what it does to your email flow? Okay, we got some hands coming up. They're an organization that is a policing organization, and they identify sources of unwanted mail and then put the IP address of that unwanted mail on a list. And so if you get blacklisted by Spam House, your spam will get stopped, but your email, if you're a legitimate sender, will also get blocked, and that collateral damage can be quite harmful. You have a risk today. If you're collecting email addresses via a web form, that Spam House will blacklist your sending IPs. Why? Not because of the bad things that you might be doing, but by the bad things that a group of enterprising Russian criminals are doing, leveraging your web forms to mail bomb people like Brian Krebs. Brian Krebs is a well-known tech blogger, author of The Spam Nation, and him and a number of law enforcement agencies and other high-profile people have been targeted by these mail bombs because people have left their email subscription web forms unprotected, and bots exploit that.
And it also points to the perils of letting bad actors into your system, right? If it's like, hi, I'm from Moscow and I'd like to actually be a client of yours, is the risk that, if they do something wrong, then there's collateral damage for the other customers?
Yeah, at SendGrid, we put a lot of checks and balances in place to limit that harm. We also send a lot of our traffic through dedicated IP addresses, so that also minimizes the harm. Some systems share a lot of traffic across many users across the same IP. So when Spam House or some other blacklist blocks that traffic, it causes a lot of harm to the good senders.
So Dennis, talk about your headache.
So the headache for me as the privacy and security guy, right, especially even when I return path and it is people. And I was serious about that. I mean, we all live in a world where we're all interconnected and all these different devices and platforms that are out there to help us do our jobs, right? My sales guys, I love them to death, but all of a sudden they want to get more leads, so they're taking their Gmail account. We're on Gmail apps for our corporate email, but they somehow plug it into RainKing or all these different list services where they're trading the email list that they have on their own computer and vice versa, and they're basically opening up a hole into our network. It's one of the things that really concerns us. Same thing with the mobile devices. Again, our phones are on a mobile device management system.
So how have you had that happen? How do you identify it and deal with it, just quickly?
Well, proactively and a little more reactively as well at times, right? I mean, we already know that there's a lot of apps out there that we don't want, and actually through Google Apps and some other platforms and mobile device management, we block those from being downloaded, right? Then there are times where we actually, about once a quarter, have to go through and audit through our logs to say, okay, who's got what connected to what laptop and what mobile device, and is that good? The mobile device management systems are now getting a little bit smarter now, where as the privacy policies, I don't know if you've ever downloaded in your iTunes account or in your Google Play Store, it now tells you what permissions it's going to ask for and take from you. These systems now are looking at those permissions saying, well, you know what, Dennis doesn't allow GPS tracking for safety reasons, right? Or doesn't allow access to the address book. And then the system will, hopefully boot that out.
Yeah, I'll start with the user, the end user being the problem, but I'm not going to place the blame on the end user. One of the constant headaches we had at Twitter is there's so much bad ingrained security kind of wrong practices out there where people have been told for a couple decades now, this is how you should do your passwords, this is how you should do this, and it's just bad advice. Like,
What's the worst advice?
one example that was common is just saw this recently where an article said never write down your password. Actually, writing down your password and putting that on a piece of paper and putting that in your filing cabinet is very secure. No one's going to break in online. I mean, the chances that someone's going to send a James Bond spy out to your house to break into your filing cabinet and go through that isn't what happens.
Wait, so this isn't like Ferris Bueller where he pulls the password and says pencil?
Right. And so that's one example. Another example with passwords, since I know you wanted to get in passwords, was, you need to take all the A's in your password and replace them with the @ symbol, and take all the E's in your password and replace them with the 3. That doesn't slow down the attackers at all, and all it does is it makes your password harder to remember. So these are there's a lot of these bad practices that have been ingrained, and everyone thinks, I'm doing the right thing by following these practices I've been told my whole life, when actually they're doing harm to their security.
Yeah, and there's a common thing that all of us could change right now. Don't use the same password for multiple services, because we know password files get leaked. They get cracked by guys with smart systems and fancy computers who can then reverse engineer what those passwords are and then try that at your name at Gmail,
So
your
should we use
name
those
at Yahoo.
managers, LastPass?
Yeah.
and all those?
No, absolutely, and this is a critical thing with passwords, with sort of changing the paradigm. Where for a long time, the security paradigm has been, and this is absolutely still super important, sort of the walled garden type situation where we're going to defend the walls, but once you're in, all bets are off, everything's available. And we really are moving into, especially with state-sponsored attacks and other things, we're moving into the era of 0 days and other things where leaks are inevitable. Leaks are going to happen, and with our lives lived more and more online using all kinds of services, the odds that one or more of them will be hacked are approaching 1. They're not 1 for everybody, but they will affect large numbers of people. And so what this means is you do need to think about limiting the damage, both companies, so there's the company side limiting the damage, like making sure, say in our case, that our stuff is end-to-end encrypted, so if we get hacked, it's just ciphertext, but also on an individual basis, use different passwords, use a password manager. Have random, decent length passwords for every service, and then have these controlled by a password manager, which you have a long password that you can remember, that you will not forget.
I want to talk a little bit about the consumer, but also be cognizant of the fact there are companies here that are trying to look at this as a tool, right? Like, hi, I'd like to use this as a customer engagement tool. That's why we send out, our email sort of newsletters. We try you opt in, opt out, that sort of thing. But let's start with just if my name's not Clinton or Kardashian, do I really have to care that much about people specifically targeting me? Or is it usually, who are the bad actors out there? We've heard about the Russians, the Chinese, the Canadians, sorry, I'm Canadian, but
For me, it's the bad actor isn't somebody specific, or it's not really, state-sponsored. It's the person that wants to make an almighty dollar, right? If you look at the crypto locker, situation, right? How much would you be willing to pay for your entire life that's probably sitting on that laptop? A lot of people want to pay, quite a bit of money for that sort of stuff. So it really comes down to the person that just wants to make a dollar, and it may not be specific to you, but they are just out there to make cash. Now, yes, there are people who are selling this data and using it. In the email world, right, we talk about spammers who take email addresses and then reuse them by sending out more phishing emails. But again, the end goal for them is to make money off of that.
Yeah.
There is the making money, and there's also the safer way of committing a crime. People want a shortcut to riches, and if you're living in an impoverished nation or some place where the standard of living is low, $10, $100 a month makes a big difference in your life. And you can do that with relative safety, knowing that exactly.
Well, an email's free, so.
But still, and there are two sides to this. There's the corporate side. There's the company services side. So much of our life is lived online. Companies know so much about us these days, and these become juicier and juicier targets for people who, you can do everything right. There are Yahoo users who did everything right. But it doesn't matter if Yahoo gets hacked and their database is now being sold to the highest bidder.
Isn't the Yahoo example, that's an interesting one, because my impression is that the top management didn't actually communicate with the security team about sort of what was, I mean, can you give me some sense? I feel like it's an internal communication issue
it's
as much as it was.
It's sort of a canonical example of corporate dysfunction on top of other things, of course, with the executive team bypassing their security team when they,
Yeah.
to do
It's,
things.
well, yes, it's not a good idea. I mean, even here, so ReturnPath is headquartered here in New York, but we have privacy and security by design methodologies, which, as we were talking over lunch, is as simple as when you're coming up with an idea and you're writing it on the bar napkin, you need to write the word privacy or security or start building in the idea of those controls. And at the same time, I make my CEO. If you look at my privacy policies right now online, he has signed off on it. And nothing is getting past the product development team without either getting a signature from me or if it's going beyond what our policies are, a signature from him.
Getting back to the original question, which I might paraphrase as, I'm not that interesting. Why would the attackers come after me? At this point, the attackers are going after everyone. They're literally scooping up all the data possible that they can get out there. And you might not be interesting today, but if you ever become interesting, or if anyone you communicate with is interesting, then they'll have scooped up that data. So this idea, I'm just not that interesting, so I don't have to worry about it, that doesn't fly anymore. And also getting back to the question, yeah, we should beware the Canadians. I say as a Canadian.
We hide in plain sight, as they say. So I want to take some questions from the audience, but let's pivot a little bit to the customer perspective from the commercial side. Give some advice from how effective, I mean, really, in terms of the options out there for building community, for reaching your customers, for engaging your customers. Messaging email seems to be still relatively best in class despite the tsunami of stuff that we get in our inboxes. So what advice do you have in terms of thinking about, how you set it up, what to think about? How do you make sure that you're not, not just harming your reputation, but opening a door for people to come in and steal stuff?
Sure. Well, aside from the security infrastructure and posture that you need to take, think about what you're going to be sending to your recipients. These are your customers or your prospects. Are you sending the right message to the right person at the right time with the right frequency? Because if you end up sending unwanted mail because you're just being inconsiderate or taking shortcuts, people are going to tune you out. And when they tune you out, they're tuning out potential goodness as well. Not only that, your ability to reach people in the future is going to drop because the systems of the internet are going to recognize that you're sending unwanted mail, and that's going to limit your ability to reach others.
Nothing with the subject line hung like a horse. Do it. For your business. So people don't do that.
Earn money, dollar sign, dollar sign, dollar sign.
Right, so I can continue. Does anybody have questions from the audience in terms of what you're thinking about?
Me?
Yes. I guess just project.
Okay, I'll try. I use LastPass, and you guys were talking, someone said it, and also saying what thing. But how can we trust LastPass? Like, what is can't that be?
So the question is, we use LastPass. Can we trust it? Dennis, you're close to this action. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I use it. And it's not like, so without getting all the technical details, LastPass isn't just keeping some sort of text file with your passwords in it, right? There's basically a salt hash encryption model between them and your own computer. And so if a hacker goes off and pulls that database off of them, they're not just going to be able to see your passwords. They have to have the other part of the puzzle, which would be the system, your phone, whatever it is that you're using LastPass on. I will be honest, I just moved over to LastPass in the last year because I was one of these people that kind of went, I really don't want to be putting that crap out there just yet. I do have other sort of passwords that have, that are similar to other ones, but I'm one of the people that had different passwords. But I just kind of went, you know what, I'm going to take LastPass and I'm going to take Google Authenticator. So when I log into my Evernote account today from here, it challenged me because I'm in a new building and a new network, and I had to pull Google Authenticator out and use it. That's fine by me.
And speaking of Google Authenticator, that's actually one of the open source projects by Google, and as a result, it can be audited and verified. I use LastPass as well. LastPass, I mean, it's trusted by a lot of people and has been thoroughly audited.
Well, I'm 1Password, but to answer your question, I would turn it around though and say, can you trust the alternatives? If you aren't using LastPass, what are your alternatives and what are the risks there? Because the fact of the matter is, unless you're really talking about, I'm going to write this down on paper and store it in a vault, which won't scale because, you know, how are you going to get to your paper all the time? What are your alternatives? And there starts to be compromises on all the alternatives.
So if you are going to use LastPass, just make sure that your passphrase, let's stop talking about passwords. Use a passphrase that's long, maybe a pain to type, but you can type fast.
Do you use LastPass? I feel like we're a big.
I use
advertising-
1Password personally. It's a
You guys both
LastPass
use
like.
1Password.
Yep.
There are many
Rhymes
good
with-
ones,
yeah.
KeyPass,
Yeah.
1Password,
The
LastPass.
key is,
They're all kind of
are the
similar.
implementers of those systems responsible? And I believe they are.
Okay.
But nothing is infallible.
But yes,
We have another question. Go ahead.
So I, as a consumer, can, protect my password, but I'm more worried about companies leaking my credit card information and other kind of data that they have access to now. How do I ensure or prevent that from happening?
I mean, I think you don't really. To be perfectly honest, the only
Please
control.
repeat the question. The question was worried about companies leaking my credit card information and other personal details when they get hacked.
How you as a consumer have control over that, and you don't. The only control you have is using services which have good security measures, and you as a consumer really have no way to audit that. So, I mean, in some ways you can vote with your dollars, but being not an expert, that's the end. That's the end of the game. And like there are sort of industry standards, like for instance with credit cards, with PCI compliance, which are supposed to protect this. But as we've seen with Target, Home Depot, you name it, like. It has certain levels of meaning. So I mean, with my company, that's our value add. We say that, oh, we encrypt all your data and we can't read it. So if we get hacked, well, we can't read it. Obviously, the bad guys can't read it. We need to make. I mean, this is a focus that I think I'm obviously biased here, but more companies should have in the sense that once you get into the walled garden,
Yeah,
it's not just a
we
free
know
for
that
all.
there are startups in this room. New York has a hotbed of startups. Build out security into the foundations of your product from the start. Anticipate that you will be attacked and people will try to penetrate your systems, and do your users a favor by giving them a reason to trust you.
And also use good cloud companies where you can leverage the security work we're doing for you. For example, like SparkPost and SendGrid. You don't want to become experts in email security, so go to someone who is going to provide that for you.
Yeah, exactly. We were just talking about it over lunch. I wrote an article in the Practicing Law Institute out in California recently, and that was the big question in the startups is, well, I don't have a privacy guy or a security guy. It's just me and my CTO. What do I do? I'm fine with Amazon Web Services. Really, to be honest, they started at a very high level maximum security, and they've got all their audits and whatnot, and then it's up to you to screw it up at that point, right? But just start with some of those services. It's perfectly fine.
One of the things I want to ask, and sort of, and we'll get some final points, but I want to talk about some of the positive examples of both. It could be sort of best-in-class practices. We've talked about some of the ways to protect yourself, but this is also a proactive. Email can be very powerful. I can't quite decide if it's a death of email because we keep reading these stories. If you find that it can be a very potent tool. When people get this right, can you give some sense in terms of either what you've seen, what advice you have to really sort of leverage the power of email? And it might be send less and make it better. Whatever.
The SendGrid mantra that I talked about before, send the right message to the right person at the right time with the right frequency, is a foundation to build on. But really, there's an acid test. Each one of you, if you're responsible for sending mail to your customers or prospects, use this acid test. Will my mail be missed if I were not to send it? This is New York. We know it's the home of Seth Godin, one of the marketing mavens in the world. Seth Godin's blog post gets delivered to my mailbox every morning, and I would miss it if it didn't show up there. I read it first thing. I love it. He delivers real value. Are we delivering value through email, and would our content be missed if we stopped?
Yeah, and to answer the question, absolutely, email can be a very powerful medium still, particularly regarding growth and growth hacking. I mean, when it comes down to it, the growth hacking practice is so much about outbound messaging. When I look at Twitter, when I joined the Twitter growth team with Justin Zhu, who just walked into the room too, also was on the Twitter growth team at the time, we were around 100 million monthly active users. We grew that to 300 million monthly active users. Email was responsible for more than half of that, where we would directly attribute the growth to being able to reach out through email. email. So like tens of millions of users every month were coming in through email. So absolutely, it can be a very powerful growth driver.
We see it also used as a great retention tool. It's not just about customer acquisition, it's about keeping people engaged.
At the risk of being sounding overly idealistic, I think email does have a place. And the reason that it has a place is that it remains the only communication messaging platform on the internet which is really truly universal and truly democratic. And this is why it has a spam problem also. I mean, there are two sides to every coin, right? But it's the one thing you can assume that everybody has an email address, and at least theoretically speaking, okay, deliverability issues aside, theoretically speaking, anyone can speak with anybody over email. There's not one company at the top making decisions about who can and cannot, no gatekeepers. And that is, in some ways, a beautiful thing, and nothing's come along to replace it. So I expect email, for all its warts and flaws, which it has many, to be around for many, many years for that reason alone. And whatever replaces it is going to have to be, in a similar vein, universal, because it serves a very important niche in the internet ecosystem as a result.
Okay.
Well, and I think you also need to understand your demographics. I was telling the story earlier that my 15-year-olds, a couple of years ago, we went to an LA an Angels game, and they asked me about the lineup, and I said, well, I emailed it to you. And they both pulled out their phones, and they looked at their phone with, I don't have an email from you. And I'm like, no, I sent it to you like last night. And then they showed me, and they're looking at their texting app.
Right.
Because email to them, and now they're 15, is just now being introduced in their life. Schools requiring them, which is on Google Apps, is requiring them to be on email. But I think you need to look at the communication channel and go, is email the right way to communicate with this person? And then sort of back to what you were talking about with frequency, we have to start learning about quality over quantity when it comes to our lists, right? You don't have to go after everyone's email address. If you have no reason to communicate to them, then don't get the email address.
Yeah, that's where list segmentation really comes into play. Not
I thought
everybody gets the
wants to
same
reach
message,
me.
right?
So I wanted, and like round robin, haiku, piece of advice, prediction, stock tip, whatever you want. But what do you want to leave the audience with? I'm going to start with you.
Well, to get back to the security play, I'd like to encourage everyone here who is sending email to deploy DMARC. DMARC is an anti-spoofing, anti-phishing protocol in email. If it had been in place, we probably wouldn't have seen these political hacks that happen. So if you are doing email, think about the security and move to DMARC. It's actually quite easy to deploy.
My simple advice is to work with me, people. I'm not here to bite your head off. Don't be fearful of me. I'm not going to come tase you. The privacy and security folks that are in the industry or in your company or somebody that you need to be working with. Len and I and a bunch of us just came back from Los Angeles yesterday, actually, at a direct marketing conference. And I'm looking at the marketers saying, listen, yeah, I get your job is to market and to collect data and to use it, but your job is to also protect it. And your job is to be one of my privacy people. And so, go to those privacy and security folks and set up a regular sort of meeting with them. Let them go through your plans. I make the joke that my real title is the chief revenue killer because the privacy guy kills all that stuff, but I have to make money because you know what? I own stock in this company that I'm working with too. I want to start retiring myself.
We know that spammers have made email hard, and that's the reason why SendGrid, I believe, is able to deliver so much value because we've simplified a hard thing. But go get the help you need from delivery consultants. SendGrid spun up an email delivery consulting team of experts. They can help you navigate this very tricky minefield that trips up a lot of people. People who have good intentions but still need some help. So go get the help you need.
Okay.
Be aware of who has your data, why they have it, and why they're using it. And I don't mean this as a value judgment. There are many companies which use your data responsibly and protect it and whatever, but the bottom line is if you're not paying for it, you are the product in some ways. And as a result, think about who you want to trust with your data and realize how valuable that data actually is. Secure your accounts because someone will monetize you. Leaks happen and you can be monetized. You might not think so, but if your email gets hacked, it can then be used as a gateway to your bank, to other things. So if you're not using a password manager, start today because being having your identity stolen, any of these, you have no idea how much your life can be ruined before it actually happens.
But still, good to know you're making money for somebody. So please join me in thanking our audience, and we'll keep Inbox awesome.